Hello, my special friends. Welcome back into the dark recesses of the Neon Gutter. My name is Bert Cohen. On this podcast, we're taking you back in time to the Las Vegas of the 1980s and 90s. On our first couple of episodes, we covered the notorious exploits of the gang at Bob Stupak's Vegas World. But today, we're going to go even a bit further back in time to Matt and Dan's first trip to Las Vegas. Hey, Dan. Hey, Matt.
Hello. How you doing? Daniel here. I'm the sexy one.
And I'm Matt. I'm the one who's not. And you know, Bert, you had said special friends, and that really did send me back in time, because that's the exact same name that they gave the reading group I was in elementary school.
I've heard that. Well,
Yes.
I'm excited to hear more of your stories, guys, or should I say bald-faced lies, about your earliest trips to Vegas. But first, I need to introduce two of your co-conspirators who are joining us today. Both guests were classmates with you guys at UC Irvine, and were also members of the Comedy Club. And they have become integral parts of your trips to Las Vegas, not just back then, but still to this day. Please welcome Mike and Phil. Welcome to the Gutter, guys.
Hi, this is
Hello.
Phil.
That is Phil, and this is Mike, and I am
That's
glad.
Mike.
I think I'm glad to be dropping into the Gutter.
We're glad to have you guys.
I am.
We're definitely glad to have
Yes.
After 35 years, you know what you're in for, Mike. So
Yes, we do.
Yeah, there should be no surprises.
The gutter feels like home to me.
you. I'm getting that impression as the podcasts go on, that it's home for all of us, really. To start out today, I'd love to hear a little bit from you two guys, Mike and Phil, about how the topic of Vegas came up, initially while you were at school, or was it at school? And how did you ever agree to do a road trip with Matt and Dan?
I barely even remember how I started getting into this. I know that I remember there were a few things that I did in college, little trips or other little things, sometimes during the middle of the week, and I would ditch classes and go do something, and I usually regretted it, but I never regretted going to Las Vegas, except for the losing of money. And with a little creative accounting, you can always say that you didn't lose any money, technically.
I'm trying to remember how exactly I got drawn into the Vegas scene with this group. I know all of us were involved with the Comedy Club, and I think our activities kind of branched out from just writing and performing, but we did other things kind of related to that. So we started doing things to amuse ourselves, whether it was making signs on campus or pranking things on campus or something like that. So I'm not entirely remember. It must have been Matt or Dan or both that approached me and said, "Hey, do you want to go on this trip?" And at that point, I guess there was some comfort level, like, yeah. Sure, it sounds like a good idea, maybe.
Yeah, it was Matt or Dan's idea, probably Matt's, I'm guessing.
yeah, I'm going to give credit to Matt here that he was the one who asked me. The first trip I took was with just he and I and this guy Darren. And the first trip we wrote about as a trip report was the four of us and two other people who we called our valets, who were friends of Matt. But I think Matt was often the impetus for all this.
I don't like idle time, and there's very little idle time if you want in Las Vegas. So
yeah.
I was going to say, this is something else I remember early on with those trips, and we had been a few times, the four of us together with maybe a couple other folks, and I'm remembering a scene because after Comedy Club we'd always go out to eat at Bob's Big Boy, which is like this really standard American diner food. And I remember the four of us talking about the Vegas novel, and like we were going to write this novel about it and our experiences, and just having like a writing session. Like we all came to it from sort of the comedy writer point of view. It's a silly place. That's a place where really stupid stuff can happen, and still does, but not like it did.
But I think Mike said something that's true too, and that is that we had moved from pranking violent frats on campus to moving our pranks to Nevada.
Right. Yeah, we had a number of little things. I remember because I was a computer science major, and my schedule was really busy, and I remember having a lot of just all-nighters in the computer lab, and it was like, it was kind of didn't make a whole lot of sense for me to take a whole weekend off to go to Las Vegas or do some other thing like that. And but I did them anyway, and it was fun, and I'm happy to have done them. I'm glad I was in there.
So I'm curious if any of you guys had been to Las Vegas before this trip, as friends, and then you became later on kind of famous for this cheapo aesthetic. Was that something that was obvious and something inherent right from the beginning, or did that sort of develop as you guys traveled?
Yeah, I had been there before, and I think I was already well into the cheapo mentality before, because it was a family trip, the family reunion with a whole bunch of relatives from out of state and different places, and we stayed at the hotel that's not there anymore called the Westward Ho, and it was really, it was one of the worst. It was just awful, and it was because of my dad. It's all on my dad's money, of course, and so I inherit the cheapo idea from him, kind of. He wanted to do everything as cheaply as possible, and there were certain things that he was willing to splurge on, but everything else was cheap.
What about you, Mike?
I don't think the cheapo aesthetic was entering the mind at the time. I think at least for me, I kind of looking back, I think the idea was this is more of an extension of the comedy world we were in. I know as a habit, most of us were carrying around little notebooks to write down jokes as we came along. So I think in some ways, maybe the idea of going to Las Vegas was like, well, hey, maybe this is a different place I can work on new or develop new material, something like that. So I don't think this specifically was like a cheapo aesthetic entering it, although probably being a college student with a limited budget, that lent into it, and being naturally economical or frugal. Yeah, I think that just kind of a natural fit in that regard. But and I don't think it was something that Matt and Dan had approached and said, hey, we're going to go to Vegas and not spend a dime either. I don't think that was part of the discussion.
Not to start. It was purely out of necessity to start. But then, to me, it just was much more fun.
Right. I don't think I ever would have gone if I thought I was going to have to spend a lot of money.
So what I'm really curious about then is you guys drove out there, right? From school, you made the drive to Las Vegas. How long was that? Who was driving? What was the vibe like on that first road trip?
It was 278 miles exactly.
Okay.
The fastest time I ever did it in was 3 hours 35 minutes. The fastest time I ever drove it in was 3 hours and 35 minutes. The speed limit at that point was still, I think, maybe 55, possibly 65, but typically 4 hours. It was super early in the morning. It was like 4:15 in the morning.
Well, that first trip that we did the report on, we got up before sunrise, and
because we just went Saturday and came home Sunday.
Right.
Was the drive fun, or is it super boring as you're just driving through the desert?
Oh, beautiful.
Both.
Yeah, we had the company of each other, but yeah, there's literally nothing exciting, between LA and Las Vegas.
There's dirt, and then sometimes there's mounds of dirt.
There's places to eat,
I remember the first time I drove through Utah, and I was like, wait a minute. This could be scenic? Like, I had no idea that a highway could be scenic. Yeah, this was not that. It was just desert and scrub.
Now, I just know personally, I was, in my early days of going to Vegas, I was not within driving distance. I was thousands of miles away and had to fly. So for me, those early trips to Vegas, I had an enormous amount of anticipation for each one. I was just giddy with excitement and thinking and planning and all that kind of stuff. Was it similar for you guys?
Yeah, there was no planning, but when you talk about the drive, Vegas in the 80s, this was before the sprawl. So it really was, you'd come around a bend, you're driving through the desert of California, you're driving into Nevada, it's really dusty and dry, and you come around this bend in the 80s and would see like Vegas just appears out of nowhere. There's no suburbs. There's no sprawl. It's just this. It was mind-boggling because, like, why there? That was the question we would always ask. Like, why'd they put it there? Like, it could have been 2 miles to the south. It could not that would have been better. Like, was there an aquifer? I don't. And then I was thinking maybe that's just where they buried the body, and they were like, well, let's just make a city here. It really was startling when you would show up. So I started to anticipate that last bend when you see it hove into view, and you don't get that anymore because now it just sprawls and sprawls and sprawls. So now, like, you can see it coming for longer.
Yeah, wasn't there a few things at the state line also back then?
And that, right.
Some
Yeah,
very disappointing casinos. Yeah.
There was just we crossed the state line into Nevada. Now we can gamble, and so let's do it right here. Let's not go any further. It's like the minimum effort put into it, and which is the whole philosophy of those casinos at the state line.
Right.
Yes.
It's still there. Whiskey Pete's is still there. And, yeah.
There's anticipation up to the trip, but the real giddiness started on the road. And as far as planning goes, we kind of just looked at billboards and go like, oh, that's the cheapest buffet. We'll go there. You know, oh,
Right.
that looks cheap. We'll go there. Or we'd laugh at like, oh, look at that guy in his white tiger. Or look at that guy with his, his orange tiger. Or look at that guy with his green tiger. It's all tigers.
Right.
But
I could tie this back into the cheapo thing too. Is I think it was pretty low risk. I mean, considering that you spend $20 to share a room 4 ways, like you could have a crappy time and still like, okay, I had a crappy time, I won't go back. But the fact that it was fun those first several times and kept being fun, it's like, you want to do it again? Yeah, okay.
well, and you could have even if you have a crappy time, that could turn into a great story later.
That's also
Exactly.
As this has.
Right.
And this has. So I just want to let our audience know as we go along, there's a great trip report up on our website that you can check out and definitely read that for a little bit more details about what we're talking about.
Do any of you remember about how much time we took to plan? Was it like 2 weeks out that we would go, let's go this week, or was it a month out? I'm trying to remember.
Maybe.
The only thing I can remember actually planning was getting money. I was like, okay, what's the maximum I can withdraw from an ATM, which was $300, and so I had $300 in my pocket.
I had
Wow.
60.
I know. I didn't have that much.
Man, I
didn't
would have killed you in the desert if I knew that.
I don't think, I'm sure I didn't spend, half of that, It's like, okay, money for the room, money for food.
We did make a reservation for the hotel because I had had a previous
You
bad
did,
experience.
okay.
And so we did have to plan ahead for that and call and make a reservation for the El Morocco, which we called the Hell Morocco, which is more appropriate. But so it must have been at least a week, maybe 2 weeks out.
I think I really went into this trip pretty cold. I don't think I had any real expectations. I didn't really, it wasn't on my list like, hey, I'm a college kid, I want to go to Las Vegas. I just never really thought about it. So I think when I got the invite, it was like, yeah, it sounds like it. Guess it'd be fun, I don't know what was going to happen, but I kind of went cold doing that. I know we weren't looking through like guidebooks or articles saying, oh, we're going to hit this place and do this when we're there. It was like, it's pretty much like let's go there cold in some ways.
Also pre-internet, so there was no you couldn't go, hey, what's going on in Vegas this weekend?
Right.
Yeah,
right.
there wasn't a whole lot of chatter on campus about what the hot spots for college kids in Vegas were because there weren't any.
Again, the median age was probably about 50, and then there was us who had just turned 21.
Yeah, we pretty much felt like we were the only college kids in Las Vegas.
We were, and that worked to our advantage in a couple ways. One is people left us alone. I mean, they gave us dirty looks, but I think they were a little bit afraid of us, so they left us alone.
Well, what did you do when you first hit town then? So you left really early in the morning. So now it's like, it's almost, sun is coming up 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning or something. The town, especially in the 80s, looks very different in the morning. What did you guys do first? Did you drive down the strip? Did you go straight to your hotel and check in? What happened?
Circus buffet.
That's probably right.
It was the cheapest buffet in town. We pulled into that parking lot.
What a way to start.
I know. We didn't know any better. I mean, actually, it had a bit of a reputation at that point, even then, as being bad.
It did.
And
Okay.
it was awful, but it was dirt cheap. And our standards were pretty low.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think we did drive down the strip, and you could just easily drive down the strip. And the thing was, Vegas was dirty. At like 8 in the morning, the only people who are up are dumb kids driving into town and people who are full of regret. And then everything was just covered with this layer of dust and dirt. And so it's like it was not an attractive town during the day. So you drive down, and it's massive, it's huge, and it's impressive. But at the same time, it's like, wow, this is kind of a grimy town. And then you pull into Circus, you walk into the chocolate scented casino and wander to the it must have been about $229, $299, something like that for the buffet.
Right.
I think it was
it was a huge buffet, and with all the stuff that was there, you could at least find something you could keep down.
and some things you couldn't.
Yeah,
they had ambrosia salad. That's all it matters.
Yeah.
Lots of ambrosia salad.
Many things you couldn't. And yeah, as I recall, it was pretty much the breakfast buffet that was really bad. The others were still normally bad, but the breakfast was really bad.
Yeah, they didn't even have bacon. They had something called sizzling, and they really promoted this stuff called sizzling, which was like not real bacon. I think it was some beef byproduct or something, but it was that bad. Like they couldn't even have real bacon, and they didn't even have donuts, which was like really annoying.
But it was plentiful. Like it was a long
plentiful.
buffet line.
But they also charged extra for drinks, I remember. You got in and then they still charged you for a drink back then. It's also the trip where we coined the term buffarf.
Buffarf, yeah.
For a particular type of buffet.
Yes.
But do you guys remember why we wanted to get there so early, short of it being a short weekend? I mean, were we planning to we weren't planning to gamble like right away necessarily.
Do as much as we could, to see as much as we could. It's like, why not?
Now, you mentioned earlier that you stayed at the El Morocco, and I just barely remember the El Morocco. I think it was just by the Riviera. I don't recall it having a tower, though. Can you describe the El Morocco a little bit, and what was your stay like there? And why did you choose it? Also, why did you choose the El Morocco, since you did actually plan that in advance?
The answer to that question is obvious. Price.
But it was $44, which actually sort of blew me away looking at that it was that expensive.
It was a Saturday.
Like that was the cheap still.
So that's $11 a piece.
There's a couple things. One was that it was really hard to find. Casinos would not let you book just a Saturday night. They'd only let you book Friday and Saturday night. So it was harder to find just a Saturday night place. Right. And then 44 was a pretty good price for just coming in on a Saturday night, even back then. And they did have a sky tower, which was 9 stories?
Tower. I thought it was 7.
Was it? Well, more than 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, the El Morocco was dwarfed by the Riviera next to it. I mean, we still had hotels with more than 3,000 rooms back then. I'd say the El Morocco had 120, 140, and 100, maybe 150, I don't know. And they had a tower in the back, and they had just a motel up front. And I believe it was somehow tied into maybe the Riviera owned the property or something toward the end, because the Riviera had an improv comedy club, and they put the opening and middling acts up at the El Morocco. The headliner got to stay at the Riviera, but the middling and opening acts got to stay at the El Morocco.
The El Morocco also was, it was, I always viewed it as it was more like a motel, right? I mean,
it was.
More like nowadays when we think of Las Vegas and you think of themes and properties, the theme was the extent of the exterior, and it was like the old idea of you build a motel with some kind of roadside attraction. You pull over the road and, oh, look, I'm staying in a place that looks kind of something like some type of structure here. So the El Morocco, it was supposed to be some type of desert scene. And I think, remember the neighboring property, was it La Concha?
La Concha.
La Concha. Mm-hmm.
And so it was like a big shell, right? It was like
yes.
And that building still exists now as they took that building of the La Concha and they moved it, and now it's the reception area for the Neon Museum, which is a little bit further north.
That's right.
But the extent of the theme, I don't recall there's anything inside the rooms or anything beyond the structure that's at El Morocco, or this is going to make you feel like you're in North Africa or anything like that, right?
Right. Yeah.
The broken air conditioning sort of made me feel like I was in North Africa.
Yeah. Well, it's a desert, so
they didn't really carry the theme that far. That's the point.
Well, that was like the common theme of a lot of the old school hotels was desert. The Sahara and the Aladdin and,
That's a really good point.
Dunes.
The sand.
The Oasis,
and dunes,
which is the
course.
dune, Oasis over Spill.
Yeah, we certainly weren't staying there for the theme, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So I've just got one more question about this place. In those days, you didn't have the internet, and it was harder to actually shop around for price. So how did you do it? I remember in my first trips, Vegas hotels would actually advertise in the local Yellow Pages all the way in Chicago. How did you dig up a deal back then?
Yellow Pages. I would go to the Yellow Pages at the library, which had Yellow Pages for all over the country, and look up the Las Vegas Yellow Pages. Now, in the Sunday paper, they would put ads from the casino hotels, but they were always for rooms for just Sunday through Thursday, and weekends were much more. So if you wanted to find something that wasn't a casino hotel, then you had to go to the Yellow Pages. So yeah, I went to the library, looked it up, and found it.
I think maybe for the younger listeners, we should explain what Yellow Pages and newspapers are. We can Google that.
Let your fingers do the walking.
All right, while they do that, we're going to take a quick break. But when we return, we're going to have more stories and early impressions of some of these classic casinos like Stardust and Caesars. A drinking game that's great as long as you can still remember your ABCs while you enjoy the game. And some very cold bear breasts right after this.
Move over, Bacon. There's something leaner. Tasty sizzling.
Whoa, sis, what's the matter with my bacon?
Here's what's the matter. F-A-T, fat. Sizzline's 50% leaner than bacon. It's all real meat without all the fat. Mmm, delicious.
Move over, bacon. There's something leaner.
So why sizzle fat? Sizzle lean.
From Swift. And look for Sizzling now. It's a better value than ever. But hurry, it's flying out of the store.
The Desert Inn presents Mickey Rooney and Juliet Prowse in Sugar Babies, the burlesque musical, produced by James Niederlander and Stan Seiden. Sugar Babies, the burlesque musical, on the Desert Inn's Crystal Room stage, with dinner shows nightly, except Monday, and now matinees Saturday and Sunday. Hailed across the country as a must-see show. Sugar Babies, call 733-4566 for reservations.
Thanks for joining us back here in the Neon Gutter. We've been talking some more with Dan and Matt, along with their buddies Mike and Phil, about their earliest trips to Vegas and the impressions it left on them. So, like a lot of first-time visitors, you guys, much of your time was just spent exploring the town. Where did you guys go, and kind of where did you feel most at home?
I had no preconceived notions. It wasn't like on my list of things to do. Like, hey, I want to go to Las Vegas. So the fact I'm going with these guys who are, my comedy friends was in itself an adventure. And where we went, I guess that wasn't. I guess in a way I wasn't really too concerned about that. But where did we go? Do you guys remember?
Yeah.
We walked.
It
We
was
pretty much walked the whole strip.
But yeah, mostly we just walked. We did what I think Phil termed Nevada.
Yeah, Nevada gating is where I came up with the term Nevada gating, which is during the day, and it's like we're in the summer, we're in the off season, so it's like really hot outside. So we realized that it's even though it's a bit of a longer trip to cut through an air conditioned casino, I'd rather add an extra 10 minutes to our walk and have it be in air conditioning rather than have it be a shorter walk in the heat.
Especially because we weren't prone to
Nevada
stopping
gating.
and gambling. So,
Yeah, did you gamble at all? I mean, Phil had a big wad of cash in his pocket. Did any of you guys gamble
Yes,
at any
he
of these places?
did.
We would walk through like Caesar's Palace just for the spectacle of just looking at $100 slot machines.
right.
That was a novelty. It's like, wow. And
We did-
hardly anybody was playing that. But what?
We did gamble though. We put a nickel in a slot. In
Oh,
every
sure,
casino.
sure.
Yeah, we
So
had
we
the
did
That was a
nickel
thing
Which
you often
ones
do,
were
the nickel
good?
test. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how you tell if a casino is good. You put a nickel in a nickel slot machine, and
Yeah,
if you win, it's a good casino. If you don't,
I can still to this day point out to you the casinos that have 500% payback on their nickel slots.
yeah,
That was
Based
an
on
early
our-
way to
yeah.
entertain ourselves.
based on the
like
one
just
test. Yeah,
One
And-
nickel.
and,
Okay, time to go to the next casino.
And of course, there were a lot of them. There was a lot of them that had 100% payout because like the nickel would just fall through because something didn't
Also
go right
true.
with it,
Yes.
and it would just fall out into the tray, and so you get your nickel back. And
We always considered that one a win.
yeah, that was
I
a win.
think-
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that we, because we got entertainment and we got our money back. But
Yeah.
I think that we were more willing to go into the weird little places than most people. Most people are going to go into Caesars or going to go Flamingo
Right.
Hilton. But
Sure.
we were stopping at the Klondike and the Pepper Mill and the Silver City. And still to this day, one of my all-time favorites, Little Caesars.
But talk about Little Caesars
Yeah.
because that place.
Little Caesars was
I
great.
miss it.
And yeah, there were some other. Yeah, was Silver City was the one that became a totally non-smoking casino. Although it might not have been. It might
It
not have been
did.
the first time we were there.
It didn't. It went the same way as most non-smoking casinos at that time, meaning it went out of business. But yeah, and it was in a strip mall. These places were largely in strip malls, and those were the places. To me, when we were in Vegas, you go to those big places, like, yeah, this is cool, but somebody's paying the bills here. And the little places, I just felt like more like, yeah, I belong here. This is much more comfortable.
I don't think even enter in our minds like, hey guys, we're going to stop at this casino. We're all just going to play here. We're all going to buy rolls of coins and just park ourselves down and play machines. I don't think that ever entered our minds.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, I don't even think we had the attention span to stay in one place that long.
And also, it wasn't entertaining. Like, what was so great about Little Caesars is there was something just entertaining about being there. The fact that it was really run down. It could have been an ex-carpet store. I mean, it kind of had that look. And
I was going to say.
All these places,
except the carpet in there was terrible.
What was left over.
Sorry. So, Little Caesars was magical to me. Little Caesars was like, they had quarter craps. They had dollar blackjack. They had a sports book in there just with a bunch of fuzzy black and white TVs and a couple of surly guys writing on erasable whiteboards odds.
It was never like, we're going to go there and we're going to win. We're going to play and win.
Yeah.
I mean, that was not, never, I don't think that was not our MO when we were there, right?
I don't think that's anyone's MO that walks into Little Caesars, that they're going to win. That's not what people do.
They've already lost.
I mean, anywhere in Las Vegas. I don't think any of us were saying, oh, we're going to, I mean, we might have wanted to amuse ourselves at Little Caesars along the way, but we didn't say, oh, tonight we're going to make it big at this casino or this casino. I think we just kind of looked at this as a place that was like, there were opportunities for us to be amused or to laugh or laugh at other people or whatever it was. I mean, all over town, and I think it became apparent that there were ample places to do that, but we didn't do that.
Kind of too smart as college students. Like we weren't dumb. Like, you kind of have to be dumb to expect to win in Vegas. I mean, like, all of us are at least familiar enough with math to know that any kind of standard gambling thing, you're going to lose over time. And like, Bert, I know that you're an expert poker player, but that's actually a skill, right? Not just. I know you're shaking your head, but you can actually do something with that. But like the way most people play with blackjack and all these games, we were too smart to know that, to think that we were going to have a chance to win. Though I will say with Little Caesars and some of the places were break-in casinos for dealers. So there was many times we would be sitting at Little Caesars and either the dealer would start dealing the wrong way around the table, or let's say an unorthodox way around the table,
or
count wrong. We got paid off.
I think it's a Southern Hemisphere way.
Yeah. That's right, exactly.
Yeah, the Southern Hemisphere.
So,
but we've got paid off on
Little Caesars.
You could get paid off on a 22 in blackjack. So hey, why not?
We felt comfortable there because we didn't know how to play these games, and it felt a lot better to look like an idiot at Little Caesars than it did at a table at Caesar's Palace. But the other thing too is, like Dan said, there were times where we had just as much experience playing blackjack as the dealers had dealing it.
Exactly.
So they couldn't make fun of us, and we couldn't make fun of them. We were all in it together,
and we'd be elbowing each other like, "She paid me on a 22," and like kind of just getting really excited about it.
It was sort of a codependency thing. They needed us as customers, and we were just there. It's like, no, don't leave. You're the only people who are in here. Or whatever. It's like because there was never a whole lot of people in there. It wasn't like it was a crowded place or anything.
Was it Little Caesars where the dealers, at least one dealer, like would shuffle the cards with just like swirling the cards on the tabletop?
That's right. The dealer did not know how to shuffle, so they just swirled them on the table for a while.
They just did a wash.
A wash shuffle, yeah.
Now, on the flip side, right about this time, Mirage has opened up as the brand new place in town and really revolutionized the city. But I assume you guys were not particularly impressed. What were your first impressions in walking through the Mirage?
I was impressed.
When you come in,
amazing.
It was kind of impressive.
It smelled like coconut.
These two bronze statues of mermaids with naked boobies. And and we like naked boobies. And
how old are you, Phil?
Well, can I say tits? Am I allowed to say tits?
It's a podcast. You can't say tits.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I won't say tits then. Okay.
Yeah, tits. Don't say tits.
Okay, so we decided this was the thing we figured out. Tits are good luck, and so whenever you go past a statue with naked tits, you rub them, and so we would do that.
I don't know if that was a
reminds me.
wee thing or not.
Well, I think it is a wee thing to society in general because the breasts on those mermaids were very shiny relative
very
to the rest of the
shiny,
body.
yes.
Similar to the butts on the Crazy Girls.
Yes.
Yes.
And Bally's had a fountain which had mermaids where the mermaids were all squeezing their breasts and the fountain was water shooting out of their breasts into the water, into the
That's
pond.
right. A
High
classic.
class.
And
You couldn't actually reach those tits though, because
you tried, Phil. You tried.
Well, I didn't want to get wet. You had to go into the fountain to do it.
Yeah.
Caesars was classy, and Mirage.
Yeah.
Besides that was classy too. I remember a Caesars trip where, you go into a sports book, they'll give you a little pen with the casino logo on it to use to fill out the sports forms. I'm not a sports player, but I did steal a whole change cup full of pens one year.
Oh, yeah.
And I had them for years. So this is the kind of thing we would do to entertain ourselves.
Yeah.
I was
You
like,
figure
oh,
you lose a whole quarter at the
Caesars
slot machines, and you got to make that money back somehow. So you take pens.
Well, everyone gave you a deck of cards or something, and we took all
dice.
of them.
Oh, yeah, all the
decks
free
of
stuff,
cards,
coffee cups,
T-shirts,
yeah.
fanny packs, and ultimately you keep taking it, but at some point you're like, why am I taking all this shit? And
No.
come home with all this stuff you're never going to use. And
The bigger question for me, Matt, is you still have most of it.
I
Not to
have-
out you, but I think
I
you're
don't
a
have
hoarder.
most of it.
I
But I
do.
have a small collection of the things that mean something to me.
Nice.
Now, we're talking about, this is still like your first day in town. This is just an overnight trip that you guys made, driving back and forth. At some point that day, you guys decide to go all the way downtown, which a lot of people don't do on an early trip. What made you decide to go downtown and you decided to actually see a show, which I'm not sure that you have seen a show since then anywhere in town in 30 years going to Las Vegas. What made you decide to see the show that you eventually did?
As Phil would say, boobies.
There
Yeah.
were classic showgirl shows in Vegas. We didn't opt for that.
I believe
They were
Yeah.
expensive.
No,
They were like
yeah,
$30.
We saw a show,
The classy one.
called Nudes
Yeah.
on Ice, and the reason why we saw it because it was cheap.
Well, we saw ads for it coming into town, and just the name itself was so damn funny.
Yeah.
like
It's like,
there's
ooh.
no nuance to that at all. Hey, this is nudes, and they're on ice.
Yeah. Well,
And it was
that's-
only $9.95.
Well, that was your joke, wasn't it,
Oh,
Matt?
my
It's
gosh.
just like, well, let's see. We've tried nudes on hardwood floors, and we've tried nudes. Let's put them on ice where I can really enjoy them.
Nudes on rugs. It just
Yeah.
didn't sell.
I love the notion there is no theme. This isn't like Paris, thing, or like this is that
Nudes
happens
on
to have
gravel.
skaters. It was not Disney. Let's just put it
Yeah.
that way.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, so we went to the Hacienda to buy the tickets. That's as far south as we went on the strip,
Right.
and
That's as far
because
south
they
as
had
the strip
they
went.
said they sold tickets for all the shows in town, and so the four guys walk up there and to buy these tickets, and I guess and the lady said, "Okay, now before you buy these, I want to warn you, the show is not completely nude."
And Matt said, "Oh, that's okay. We're only just interested in the skating."
We saw it more than one time too. We have to say
We
that.
did. We went back. We went back.
It was
to Nudes
it was
on Ice.
just that good.
It was,
went to-
Was it
Nudes on Ice
was it
yeah.
advertised? I don't remember. Was it advertised somewhere?
Well, how else would we have known about it?
It must have been billboards.
Was it one of those like the weekly guide?
No, I
things?
think it was one of the billboards as we
billboard.
went into town. And that was a big splurge for us. $10
Yeah.
a person was a big
$10.
splurge.
I know.
And it was, like partially because it ate up some time that we knew we really didn't want to spend just sitting in a casino gambling. It's like we could
It was
sit
so
here
good
and sit at a slot machine. It's like, well, this we sit down and we pay the ticket price, and we can't lose any more than that.
Now, I knew a little bit about downtown before we went there because my great aunt, my father's aunt, had actually been a waitress at the Golden Nugget for like 40 or 50 years.
Wow.
So I had been to the Mint for a buffet when we visited her in town once before, and I remember that like
Mint.
at night you could drive down Fremont Street and it was like daytime because the neon was so bright and it was just like amazing. But that's from when I was a little kid, so I at least knew of downtown from that. But this is the first trip, and this is the first time we all went to downtown.
the show was at the Union Plaza, which is now just called the Plaza. Back at this time, was the Fremont Street Experience built yet? The light show overhang. So it was, and could you still drive on? You could still drive on.
Yeah, it
on
was
Fremont
an actual
Street.
Not only could you drive on it, you could actually get drunk and pass out in the gutters along Fremont Street.
Right.
And
It was
or
a-
get in
yeah.
fights and
I love hearing you guys talking about Fremont Street, but I really have to get back to Nudes on Ice. So you've got a great blow by blow description of the show in the trip report. Again, check out our website and you can read more about the show. But give us, if you don't mind, a brief rundown of some of the acts and how the show kind of went off.
That it wasn't a nude show. They had 4 women that came out in
Topless.
Las Vegas typical Las Vegas showgirl outfits with these just ridiculously high feathered things on their heads, and they're topless. And they come out from the sides on the stage and they skate around in a circle once, and then they move off to the sides and stand on their own individual daises and just sort of stand there topless, smiling and doing nothing for pretty much the whole rest of the show.
But skating is a generous word. Those 4 women kind of hobbled across the ice to their daisies. And the ice was maybe 20 by 20 feet because it was on a theater stage, and it wasn't a big theater. It was a small theater. So it was like it's a very, very small piece of ice.
No, that can't be the whole show. So what else?
Yeah.
What else
Well,
is
later
happening?
there were some like real skaters that really knew how to skate and would skate around, but most of them weren't topless.
there was also, there were interacts between there were some decent skaters, and then they would have comedian on. I don't remember the first comedian. We saw a couple of them there, and it was very standard.
Robert Allen.
Allen.
Wasn't that his name?
It sounds familiar.
Yeah.
But the show there was no continuous thread or theme it was just sort of a fragmented little
variety show.
It was like a variety show, right?
Yeah.
And maybe that was something like although by the time we went there, it was no longer something you would see on TV, but kind of like the variety special you might see, just kind of like, oh, we'll put a little sketch here or something, but nothing linking each other to each other, and
there were mini arcs, I think. Like I remember, and I'm conflating it because we saw it and then we saw it again when they updated it in 1990, Nudes on Ice 90. But they would do like a few numbers that were in Rio, and then they did a few numbers that were about Paris, or but then they would just change their costumes and the sets, and there'd be the next thing. Yeah, it was kind of confusing if you were trying to piece it together. And this is where we first saw Los Hombres of Fun too, which was
No, they weren't. It was Los Latin Cowboys.
Yeah, the real name was Los Latin Cowboys, and they were 2 or 3 guys, and they just had some South American yo-yos and got on stage and told some bad jokes and played with their yo-yos.
And they did this on ice?
No, the ice. They stood in front of the ice,
and they were topless.
No,
they were topless. They
had these. Yeah.
They were. So what happened is the comedian, he said, "Oh, they said that 1 out of 6 people are gay," and then he came up to our table and he counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, pointed at me and said, "That means you're gay." And so I was the target
hilarious.
for pretty much all of his gay material. And then Los Latin Cowboys picked up on it, and they were going, "Oh, Dan, do you want to have a date, Dan?" And even after the show, they were like, as we were leaving from backstage, came this voiceover like, "Dan, we're waiting for you." So I got singled out. It was very exciting to be like the gay one and
everything.
Yeah.
Also, and it's like, oh, so are you gay? And ha 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 ha. That's a laugh. And no, but seriously, are you gay? Ha 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 ha. And they just repeat that over and over again. No, and the impression I got is like, this is the same joke he does every single night. They pick somebody out to be gay and say, "Are you gay?" every time, and it's just that's the formula.
Oh, it's fun.
We're here to have fun.
Now, according to the trip report, all this ribbing from the comedian drove you to drink, Dan. So I want to know.
I think that was the first.
You got really drunk. You were drinking throughout the day. Tell us if that was true or not.
We started to develop like some ways to drink that was just another game. We're just playing, and the alphabet is as a poet, as a writer. This is like I started to drink. I think I may have started with an amaretto sour, and then probably went on to Blue Hawaii, and then probably a Cosmo,
It's just like in those children's books of the alphabet.
It's a children's book, exactly. In fact, there's $1 million idea, guys.
C is for Cosmo.
D is for daiquiri. E is for
If you're listening to this
Everclear.
podcast, you cannot take that idea. This has already been.
Yes.
We're reserving that
Copyright.
idea for a children's book now.
Tap, tap, no take back. And
Yeah, so
we-
you got to, Dan actually got to about the letter J
sounds about
before
right.
he bumped into a light post and apologized to it.
That really hurt too.
That's right.
Yeah. It was one of those apologies where you expect the person to apologize to you, but the lamppost did not apologize to me. I just want to be clear.
But we
The,
should pause here to point out that downtown to us was a wonderland. Like
It
the
was.
strip was huge and it was a lot of walking to get from place to place. And back then the parking lots were in front of the casino, so you had to walk through the parking lot to get to the
Right.
casino. Downtown, it's just like 20 feet door to door. And the drinks just kept coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They wanted people
And
down there.
it's- Yeah, and for the cheapo mentality, it's all free because you're gambling. So you get a free drink while you're gambling. And, cocktail waitress comes around. Would you like a cocktail? Yes, I would. And it's free. And it's like, so you can drink as much as you want.
Yeah, it just seems so much easier to get drunk downtown. But and also at Jackie Gone at the Union Plaza owned by Jackie Gone, the waitresses walked around. They shouted, "The Union Plaza would like to buy you a drink," and that's like everywhere but downtown was. So you didn't pay a dime, and you got a lot of liquor.
Yeah.
And Dan took the most advantage of that. Almost halfway through the alphabet.
We developed other ways to drink later on, like the rainbow and other approaches. I want to say there was one other thing that was really entertaining that night, which was, you may not pick up on it, but Matt, especially back then, was very easy to annoy. So there were a lot of ways.
I can tell you from personal experience, he still is.
Yeah.
All right, that's
Now
enough,
he's
guys.
such a-
That's enough. Let's knock it off.
That's right, exactly.
So
The first trip, Darren, we drove through Baker, California, and there was a really bad diner there called Bun Boy. And Darren started to go, Bun Boy, Bun Boy, Bun Boy, I love you, Bun Boy. How is this going for you, Matt? Bun Boy. And for some reason, I had just seen, I had heard some rap record where the guy was going, boy, boy. So I started going, boy, and very drunk at this time. This was a really great thing because Matt would just start steaming, like, boy. And then later on, Shakes, who will be on a future episode, would come to town with all of his pennies saved up in a coffee can.
Right.
And he'd just walk around going, like shaking his.
The visceral reaction to that. Oh my God. And what I learned from that trip is that if you show people that something annoys you, they're more likely to keep doing it.
We invented trolling, essentially.
Yeah, and we had and there was throughout all our trips there was many opportunities to annoy Matt. Lots of people did various things. There were various people that joined us for one or two trips that would get on Matt's nerves. And
those will be future episodes.
Yeah, those will be future episodes. Yeah.
And the other thing about downtown that I really loved was every casino had to come on. They had something to get you in the door. They had a free slot pull, or like Fitzgerald's would give you a $2 roll of nickels for free just for coming in, keychains. And then there are all these little places on Fremont that even though we knew nothing, we could tell that they were just a hustle. And that was like Coin Castle, Sassy Sally's, Glitter Gulch, that just had slot machines and had very aggressive women out front saying, "Oh, I'll show you the hot machines. I'll show you the hot machines." And they try to drag you in there. And they somehow got paid by how many people they suckered into coming into the place. But they had lots of free stuff.
That was the common thread, right? That was what basically drew us to these places in some ways, right? It was like that. We're going to go there for this. Hey guys, we can. There's a coupon here for a free whatever it was. I mean, I'm trying to remember the luxurious stuff that we acquired on those trips. It wasn't anything to remember now, but we certainly at the time it was something that we were looking for, or seeking.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like gambling. It wasn't drinking. We didn't go there the intent of getting drunk, right?
Yeah. Well,
not always.
To us that was one of the major things that amused us the most is that we would go in, get a free keychain, get a free cheap digital watch, get a free, whatever it was, and then leave.
Professional slot player's glove.
Professional
that was
slot
my favorite
glove, which was. Yeah.
Have you ever tried playing slots with an amateur slot player's glove?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a disaster.
Yeah.
It does not work.
You just can't do it. Yeah,
It's physics.
But they actually
and everybody
just
looks at you with your amateur glove on, and you just they can tell you.
They were actually just white cotton, really flimsy white cotton gloves.
One of the things that they did is the gimmick to get you in. They had stuff. They had a little hook thing, which was a thing called a jackpot roll. Here, take this jackpot roll, and it was a little thing. It was intended to look like a roll of coins or a roll of chips, gambling chips. And what it really was a piece of wooden dowel that they had wrapped up in a thing and wrote jackpot roll on it. You take this back to the cashier in the back, and you'll get a free spin on this wheel, and you can win a prize, whatever it is. And it was and it didn't mean anything at all. It was just to get you to go into the casino. You had to walk all the way to the back, past all the slot machines, and hopefully enough people couldn't walk past a whole huge bank of slot machines without stopping and putting something in. And then there was the other thing which we wound up calling the stupid bucks, which were these sort of oversized fake dollar bills or whatever that they would hand you. You'd spin a wheel out in the front. Oh, you won $17. And so they hand you $17 in fake money, which you then went back and cashed in for your prize. And it's like, and none of it meant anything at all.
But we derived a lot of satisfaction of getting the free stuff and circumventing the play that they're putting in.
That was the fun.
But we didn't play their games, basically.
So to me, that feels very familiar with how you guys approach Vegas World, too, in terms of the deals that they gave you. So you found satisfaction out of, taking advantage of what they would offer you without giving them what they were expecting out of you guys.
Yeah, it was a game to come out on top. Yeah.
The thing that just occurred to me now is that we transcended Las Vegas. I mean, we played the whole town like a game rather than the games in the town.
Yeah.
We were there to just not just make our own fun, but I mean, I guess when I say it that way, it's kind of stupid because we'd actually, what did we come away with? Some LCD watches and a piece of dowel. Phil's got some doweling, but I mean, even still, like, it's interesting to think of the whole town as this is our game. The whole town is the game, not the games in the town.
But you guys did leave with more than most people leave with, which is true. An empty pocket.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
So eventually you guys, very late at night, make your way back to El Morocco and spend the night. Sunday can often be a little rough going home, especially if you got a long drive ahead of you. How was Sunday?
Yeah, exhausting. I mean, we especially those early trips, I think it was kind of a point to see the sunrise. And there was kind of, again, this was like our egging each other on, like, somebody would be like, I'm tired. And then everyone else would kind of like, you're not going to bed. Come on. And then we would just do the next thing and the next thing until, that's where we started that pattern of, we didn't always see a show, but afterwards then playing craps and then go get some pie. And then you walk up here and then the sun starts to come up and you're like, okay, I think we can go to bed now.
Yeah.
And so
you start to see this, you've been out all night and the sky starts getting light and you realize, we've really been out for a long time.
You'd be up 26, 27 straight hours and not relaxing, but you're going the whole time. And I don't know if I can do that anymore. I'd love to give it a try, but
I'm done with
definitely walking out of a casino and seeing the sky getting light is like a moment of like pride, but also a moment of like, oh my God, I've made so many mistakes in my life.
Yeah. What about
just in the last few hours?
There was a lot of peer pressure. There's peer pressure, of course, to stay up and stay out. But also it's practical because, keep in mind, we were all sharing basically the same rooms, right? Basically, and it wasn't like, hey, and we had one car or limited options as far as transportation. So if the group was going out, it wasn't like, oh, hey guys, I'm going to head back.
Yeah, and with our group,
now.
You would never want to be the first one to close your eyes because God knows what would happen to you.
Yeah, and you see the light coming, and you think, wait a minute. You mean to tell me that time has been continuing to move forward even while I was having fun?
It's a long drive back home. How did that go? Was that as fun as the drive there?
Sure, why not?
I think so. It was more melancholy, less giddy.
Yeah.
But somebody would just start cracking up. Like, you wouldn't say anything, and someone would remember something from the night before and start busting up, and then everyone would start laughing.
There was always a certain amount of, let's get the hell out of here. My God, I can't stand any more of this, and we would try to escape. You sort of have to escape the city. But yeah, and that was the thing I would do, which I don't really quite remember why I started doing this, but I would go to a place called, what was it called? Four Aces?
Four Aces Liquor
store. Yeah. That was behind the behind the Golden Nugget.
Yeah.
I would buy a girly magazine there, usually of some title that I had never heard of prior, and just buy, and I think it was Mike who started referring to it as literature, and so that became what it was called. I had to buy some literature, and I think part of the thing that motivated me to do that is because I had some tangible thing that I had spent my money on, that it wasn't just a matter of it got all just flushed down into a slot machine or something. I had a physical, this is the prize that I won or whatever. This is money that I spent and got something for, as opposed to money I just gambled away. I think it was Mike again who came up with the idea of the letters to the, people would write little stories about their sexual experiences and send them in as letters. People are somewhat familiar with the letters to Penthouse. And we made Mad Libs out of them. I would take this story, dear whatever the magazine was.
Dear Jugs.
Jugs.
We'd be driving home, and Phil would be sitting there putting it together. So we'd be all sitting in the car, and he'd say, "Okay, I need a body part. Okay, I need a color. Yeah. Okay, I need
give me an amount, and I'd replace all the key words. Yeah."
And then he would read back this dirty letter as a Mad Lib that was no longer dirty, but was all extremely hilarious. And so all four of us would be just cracking up in the car driving home listening to these things.
It's kind of the best use of porn, I think.
It was.
It is.
It was probably the best thing I've ever seen done with porn, yeah.
Well, we're going to take one more short break, everybody. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about their first time, their drive back, and who won and lost the Big Gulp Challenge. We'll be back in just a second.
Tonight on Vegas.
I know what you're after, and you ain't getting it.
A very pretty girl's got something hot.
Where is it?
And the most powerful men on the strip are ready to kill for it.
No.
Vegas.
Following Charlie's Angels.
Big gulp. Big gulp. 7-Eleven's big drink for a big thirst. Your favorite quencher poured over ice fresh from a fountain just like you used to get it. You got a big thirst, get you a big gulp at 7-Eleven. You drugstore cowboy, you.
And we're back in the Neon Gutter. Now, guys, I recall reading about all of you drinking big gulps or something on the drive back from Las Vegas on that first trip, but you turned it into a sort of a contest. Is that right?
Not so much a contest as a dare. Is on the way out of town, you're thirsty, so you stop at 7-Eleven on the way out, get gas, and buy a big gulp or a double gulp, which was 64 ounces. And then the challenge was to see if you could make the whole trip home without having to pee. Or if you did pee, do it so discreetly that Phil didn't know you had just done that in his car. And usually, like, somebody broke. Like, somebody broke around Barstow. Somebody's like, I don't think I'm going to make it.
There was a time, there was a place, and we just drove by, because I just came back from Vegas to see my mother-in-law, who's actually, that's a whole other potential topic, but we were driving back and I saw the place where I had to stop. It was this one little market, and it's now abandoned. It's now derelict. But I remember running in there and like, I got to use your bathroom, and I ran. And when I came out, I was still very much in the Vegas mode, and I tipped the guy. I was like, "You saved my life, man." Handed him $1 or 50 cents or whatever it was at the time. But might as well tip for the bathroom. And they were like, "Don't go in there."
Have a free Caesar's pen.
Yeah.
I think the idea was, like you said, a dare. I think it was, but it was also something I think we also thought like, well, hey, we're going to hit the road. We're not planning to stop. You want to have something to drink? Okay, that's it. But then it sort of escalated to, you're not just buying one drink, or you're going to get a big drink,
I can see
everybody's going to do it.
I can see myself being the one who would call anyone who got something smaller than the biggest drink available a wolf. Just like, come on.
Yeah.
This was your revenge.
After a while,
this is what your revenge for Bun Boy.
Right. After a while, I remember I started getting, instead of a soda, I would get like an icy or what, a Slurpee or what, a Slurpee.
That's cheating.
No, it was still a big gulp of Slurpee.
It's not.
It was still like
there's so much air. There's too much
though.
air in there.
Yeah, exactly.
Half air.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's what I did anyway, so maybe I cheated.
I'm sorry, Phil, but when we go later this year, you're going to have to do the full double gulp challenge.
All right. Fine.
You need to make it up.
Okay.
That's awesome, guys. Thank you very much for all of your remembrances and crazy stories, and like I said earlier, just outright lies. In future episodes, I promise there's going to be a lot more sentimental stories and crazy exploits that revolve around everything in Las Vegas, including urination, probably a bunch of boobs. But for more of those, you're going to have to join us next time down here in the Neon Gutter. Hope to see you then.
The dice are cast, the cash won't last.
The Neon Gutter is a Big Empire production. Randy Shandis, executive producer. Our incredible theme music is courtesy of Rosin Coven. Do you have something to say? Call our voicemail line at 775-400-2941. And for more episodes, vintage photographs and video, contact info, and those amazing trip reports, visit us at neongutter.com.
Las Vegas haiku number 3. Lost enough money. One thing left to do. Buy porn. The sky gets lighter.